The Facebook Live, because this is our, it's a third account that we set up just for this event. So we've been having trouble with it today. So I'm going to record and then we'll publish afterwards. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Welcome to PowerSkills. Hopefully you've had the pleasure of joining in on other sessions. If this is your first session with us, we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. So please feel free to use the chat and let us know if you're in Montreal, or if you're in some other part of the world tonight. So we have someone from Toronto. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. We have a few Montrealers. This is fantastic. My name is Valerine Dueni. I am a career advisor at Career Advising and Transition Services, fondly known as CATS, with McGill School of Continuing Studies. PowerSkills is a career summit that focuses on soft skills. What are the skills that we need to make sure that we stay agile and adaptable, especially in challenging times? Tonight's panel is hosted in collaboration with Macy's, the McGill Association of Continuing Education Students. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing your moderator for tonight, Dabisha Kohila Nathan. She is the Vice President of Social Affairs at Macy's. She is an administrator at McGill University. Academically, she is currently pursuing a graduate diploma in management at the School of Continuing Studies. She holds a BSc in microbiology and immunology. Ladies and gentlemen, Dabisha.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Val. So welcome to our event titled On Air with Montreal's Leading Women of Resilience, Power, and Impact. Today, we will explore what resilience means. How does resilience allow us to adapt, overcome, and grow from the challenges we face in life? Is being resilient now more important than ever given the current pandemic? These are some of the questions that we will be answering tonight, along with many more. Now, before we proceed, let us define resilience. What exactly is resilience? The American Psychological Association defines resilience as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. It's interesting to note that the APA defines resilience as a process of adapting. It's a process that allows us to adapt, to overcome, and to grow from the challenges that we face in life, so that we grow basically into more stronger, wiser, and courageous human beings. Now, we seem to hear a lot about resilience in our organizations, such as in our workplace, and also in the media. But what we need to understand is that resilience has always been part of humanity. For example, if there is a strong thunderstorm, we see that trees, they'll bend, they'll sway, they'll adapt to the strong wind. And then once the storm passes, then most of the trees, they'll revert to their original state. Another great example of resilience is the human body. Its astonishing ability to overcome and heal and recover from minor cuts and injuries, like the paper cuts that we all experience here and there. So resilience is all around us. It's part of us. It's basically the human ability and process to bounce back after facing a trauma or challenge. So tonight, I'm beyond excited for us to explore all things resilience with our three powerhouse panelists. They'll share their stories, their thoughts, and insights on resilience and how resilience has allowed them and continue to allow them to be women of power and impact in society. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce you all to our panelists. In no particular order, we have Julie Kenville. Julie is president of the McGill University Health Center Foundation in Montreal. Since assuming the leadership of the Hospital Foundation in October 2015, she has spearheaded a transformation of the organization, resulting in a 60% increase in annual revenue and a growth of the donor community by more than 25%. In 2018, she was named a top 100 most powerful women in Canada. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you.
Would you like to actually share with us your former roles in journalism and in the political government? So roles that you occupied before entering the MUHC.
You want me to tell you about the roles?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
So you worked in journalism and in the political government?
Absolutely.
Would you like to describe your experiences there?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up wanting to do just one job. I wanted to be a foreign correspondent. And I think a lot of us have the same experience. We grew up with this really big dream and we set out to achieve a goal. And as I arrived after about a decade in journalism, I realized that I actually didn't have the right personality for that job. I'm not cut out to observe and sit quietly, which is maybe a role that is often desired of women. And I realized that I just wasn't comfortable in that role. And so I made a jump into politics and then government and worked as Associate Chief of Staff for then Health Minister Philippe Couillard. And as you can imagine, this was an incredible opportunity to have impact across the province. And then I returned to Montreal and joined the executive team at McGill University Health Center and worked very, very closely with McGill University on building this exceptional new hospital that we have today. So I've been blessed in my career, and we'll talk about some of my experiences today.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie. We then have Adonna Greaves. Adonna personifies versatility and motivation in the health and fitness industry. A two-time North American martial arts champion and creator of the Cardio Combat Training Certification Program, Adonna is now a certified trainer and group fitness instructor. She has been leading group fitness classes and personal training sessions for the past 35 years, giving her a solid reputation in the fitness community. Thank you for joining us, Adonna.
You are so welcome. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Would you like to share with us your academic background and how you got into the fitness industry?
Sure. I was always active when I was young, and my real pursuit in high school is I wanted to get into medical school. But due to circumstances financially, etc., that I ended up taking a little bit of a swerve. I started doing martial arts when I was 13 and got into a lot of sports. I loved the sports. I loved the camaraderie. I loved working with the team. And then once I graduated from high school, I worked a few years to be able to put myself into university. And then from there, I went into, I got a degree in microbiology and biochemistry. And that took me to working in the cancer research department at the Hospital for Sick Children. And I was there for 9 years doing that. Prior to that, I was doing immunology and neuroimmunology with another scientist at the Surrey Place, which was affiliated with sick kids. I definitely liked the research, but it didn't do what I thought it would do for me. And because always being in the fitness industry, I somehow gravitated to that, where I looked at what I was doing scientifically and thought, how can I be more impactful? And then I realized doing fitness and helping people and the body as a whole is what really sort of propelled me. So that's how I got into doing fitness on a full-time basis. And I resigned from research back in 1996, I think, from Sick Kids, but all along I was always teaching on the side. So that's how I got into the fitness industry full-time.
That's awesome. I love how one path basically makes you realize that there's another path waiting for you that's much more meaningful.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well stated.
Thank you, Adonna. And we now have Dr. Elaine Champagne. Dr. Champagne describes herself as an old school community-based pediatrician in a large urban group practice here in Montreal. Graduating from Université de Sherbrooke in the 1980s, then specializing in baby to adolescent healthcare in the days of meningitis, pneumonias, and various other severe invasive infections, she is constantly reinventing herself with the changing times. Hi, Dr. Champagne.
Hi.
How has it been practicing medicine remotely?
I think it's very interesting how you see people in their own environments. You see the mom with the baby sitting on them, but in their own living room or in their own kitchen, and seeing the interaction and the feeling. I do find it a little difficult not to be able to touch my patients, but I think for a lot of elements, the children are actually more at ease in front of a camera, especially with the pandemic. They see their grandparents only by Zoom. So when I see them in person, it's scarier because I've got a mask and a visor and a hat and a gown. And so it's probably easier for them on the video.
And there's no that doctor's office scaries that they're usually used to.
And they haven't spent an hour in traffic either.
Exactly. That is very true. Awesome. So I'm so thrilled to have all three of you here today. So let's get the show on the road. I'm going to start off actually our discussion right off the bat with a direct to the point question. And that is, as a female, what types of challenges or adversities did you encounter when you first entered the workforce? And now when I mean these challenges, they don't just have to be challenges caused by external factors, but they could be those inner struggles that we human beings deal with on a daily basis. So what challenges did you encounter when you first entered your specific work field? Oh, Julie, you're on mute.
Sorry, maybe I'll get us started in that conversation. You know, I think in every position I've ever had, I was confronted with major challenges. And I'm convinced at this point that if you're not facing any obstacles, you're simply not trying hard enough. But I do think that women are facing very different obstacles in their career that men are. You know, sexual harassment, the judgment for their appearance, and a number of judgments that we've discussed before. I think that generally women are also their biggest obstacles because of the imposter syndrome. We all need to retrain our brains and build much more confidence in ourselves. We walk into a room, especially when we're starting off our careers, and no one looks quite like us. I've always worked in male-dominated environments, and they all seem to be friends and be part of the same inner circle, and we feel like outsiders, and we're always 10 steps behind. But men walk into a room and they feel very comfortable and they take their space. Early on in my career, I always took the chair in the back of the room. I wore Hillary Clinton pantsuits and tried to blend in that maybe nobody would notice that I was different than they are. Today, after all of these years, what I realized is that I was falling into a trap. What I bring to the table is actually my unique perspective, my style, my experience. I'm not like them, and that's an asset, not a disadvantage. And I just didn't know that yet, and the people around didn't know that yet. So I think obstacles are healthy. It's just part of the learning process, but we have to have enough confidence to get through them and learn from these experiences.
Very well said. I love that. Now, for you said that in the beginning, you kind of succumbed to their expectations of what you should be like.
Yeah.
Did it take you a while to realize that, you know, you were falling into their expectations, or did it just automatically click to you and you changed ways quickly?
No, it took me a long time, and we have to be honest about these experiences. By the time I realized that I had fallen into this trap, I had made it to a director's level, and it was actually a young woman who worked for me, one of my very young managers, who walked into my office one day, closed the door, and said, "You've made it, now start dressing like a woman." And until that moment, I actually hadn't quite realized what I was doing. I was just trying to blend in. And today I wear, usually when I go to the office, not in a pandemic, I wear 99% of the time, I wear dresses, bright pink, very bright colors. And I walk into rooms, and I'm a member of many clubs, and I'm often the only woman in the room, but I'm wearing a bright pink dress and making sure everybody knows that I also know that I look different than they do. I own it.
Yes, I love that. Own it. Love that phrase. Would any of our other panelists like to share their story? So what challenges did you first encounter when you entered the workforce?
I think that in the olden days in medical school, there were a lot more teachers who were male. Now in med school, there's probably a lot more women than men. And as women, even my age, get older, we are now the teachers. I think in medicine, it's a little different in that we make the exact same salary for the exact same art, act, or hour of work as a man does. I think we probably approach a patient differently and sometimes take a little bit more time per patient, but we still fortunately have the same remuneration. And I think that from studies I've read that there's less mortality and less like morbidity, sickness after operating or being followed by a female physician than with a male physician. So we've got a lot going for us.
That's very interesting. Interesting. And how about you, Adonna?
You know, I think I didn't really have too much of a problem in the work field, but I did have it with an investigator at the hospital for sick children. She was a very domineering female in a very male-oriented position. And because of that, she was always wanting to prove herself. So she used to micromanage her group like to the tilt. And it was uncomfortable that way to the point where it wasn't, I think it kind of turned me off of that aspect of furthering my career in research or getting my PhD. And from that, I had decided that, you know what, I need my freedom of expression the way I would like to live. And I was more the person in the room that would stick up for individuals that were more intimidated. So I didn't have a problem in the work field per se that way, but I did see how others were affected because we were in a predominantly male-oriented research facility. So I understand how women can get to a point where they just feel insecure. I felt insecure just because it was a new job. And I was like, oh my God, I just graduated and that I've got to do research and I've got to deal with things that I didn't know because we never learned this in the university sector. But once I got into it, it was okay. But that's kind of where I stood at that point.
Yeah, it's interesting how our colleagues, or let's say our superiors, they might discourage us from pursuing a path that we thought we could follow in. So that's an interesting story. Do you think perhaps your manager acted the way she did because she thought that was the way a manager had to behave?
You know, I know that she was one of the few female investigators at the hospital for sick children. So I think she was really trying to make a name for herself. She was very good, very meticulous, you know, but even to the point where it was somewhat abusive to some of the other researchers. We had fellows that came from Japan and from China, and if they didn't, you know, speak proper English, it was a whole issue, and it was just not a comfortable situation. And I didn't like that because I'm a compassionate, empathetic individual, and I kind of always kind of help the underdog. So it was a tough situation. I enjoyed it a lot, and it taught me a lot, definitely. And I admired her, how she, you know, handles certain things, but I realized it wasn't the environment that would make me grow. So here I am. That's it.
The way you dealt with that challenge was you reflected upon it. You didn't want to work in such an environment, and you pursued other field.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now while we're on the topic, let's talk about women and resilience. In my opinion, I feel as if organizations expect women to almost display a higher degree of resilience compared to their male counterparts. So for example, if we have a female worker who has just given birth recently, she's expected to return to work at the end of her maternity leave in most situations. In the media, we see it frequently, female celebrities, they've just given birth, but then a few days later, they're on the beach, their bodies look incredible as if they've never given birth. So it's almost as if women, they're not even given that adaptation phase when they encounter extraordinary events in their lives or these challenges in life. They're expected to quickly overcome these challenges and then quickly revert to their original state. So my question is, do you believe there's a societal pressure on women to be hyper resilient, or is it just all in my head?
I mean, I think that is the pressure that women put on themselves. I'm not sure that that is societal. I mean, this is the conclusion I'm coming to. And I love Adonna's example, because let's go backwards on what should have occurred. She should have had a female manager who was proud to have another woman working with her, and she would have encouraged her and supported her. I feel blessed. Some women broke that ceiling and allowed me to move to a different position. Those women, many of them, were not allowed to have families. They weren't allowed. You had to choose between having children and having a big career. I came along, my generation, we were allowed to have it all. Right? And we have a responsibility. We have to bring up other women and support them and allow them to take the maternity leave and to return and to be gradual. But if women are putting pressure on other women, they're creating a situation that is unsustainable for women. If we want to have women in the workforce, we have to convince them to take the time for healing, to take care of their families. We have to convince them to take time with their families once they have children, that it's okay to take weekends off. You don't have to work 7 days a week because some men do. So I think the problem is women, if I may say.
Interesting. Okay, so it's the pressure we put on ourselves.
I think so.
And listeners and viewers, please feel free to share your own opinions, stories. So feel free to unmute yourself, or even put in the chat box as to what you think about this whole topic as well.
And I think women are probably also uniquely suited to be resilient. I think it is a strength to be able to live a situation that is difficult or different or just a bigger challenge, and to rise to it.
Yeah.
Do you think biologically we're inclined to be that way?
I mean, I think the myth of having it, I think it's a myth of having it all. I think you can have it all, but not all at the same time. I think there's a time for family, there's a time for work, there's a time for teaching, there's a time for learning. And I think you have to accept that you can't do everything at the same time.
I have to agree with Dr. Champagne, but I think as well, another challenge for women is accepting help, because we put so much pressure on ourselves that we have to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect leader. And that pressure is all internal. Most men don't put that kind of pressure on themselves. They're okay at working late evenings and allowing someone else to take care of the kids. So again, pressure we put on ourselves. So I mentor a lot of young women, and the first thing I say to them is, find what you don't like to do, reduce the number of obligations that you have, and ask for help. It is okay to get someone else to make the meals for the family. You don't have to be baking cookies. I remember there was a moment in my career where I was trying to decide where I was going to go next. And I found a lot of women who were within my network, but I didn't know very well. And there was one woman who I still am very thankful for the advice she gave me. And today she's our ambassador to France, Isabelle Hudon. She said to me, I just picked up the phone, and she said, Julie, I want to say one thing. I didn't bake cookies for my son, and he's just fine. And it was the one thing I just needed to hear at that point, because you feel all that guilt. So I agree. You have to ask for help. You cannot do it all. It's just not physically possible.
Can I just add, it just reflects a little bit of what your question was about female and resilience. Just looking at it from the perspective of my fitness classes, which you know, Debisha. In general, when I have a husband and wife in the same class, often the husband will look at the wife and go, how is it that she can do all of that without taking a break? So I always say to my girls, like, we rule, we rock, we should be in charge of this world, because we are built to be able to take more. We have a higher pain tolerance. There's so much positivity that we exude, but if you're insecure and you don't see it, then we have to try to help each other to bring it out. So I just had to say that, because I know what these guys are always saying with their wives. It's crazy. And I know there's a guy here, Nail, don't take this personal, hon. It's all good. Some guys are good too.
I love that. Thank you. There's so much support in the chat as well. Neo says, I confirm, as the only guy in a woman-only team. He's always impressed. He feels like an imposter. Linda says, I love that, as I do believe us women put way too much pressure on ourselves. Tina says, we should respectfully support one another. Yes. Love that. So actually, I want to talk about, I wanted to discuss this actually later on, but I'll bring it up right now. So we've talked about women being able to support one another. And so there's obviously this preconceived notion or stigma that women in the workplace, or even it can be in your personal lives, that women, they strive for competition rather than collaboration. And competition to a certain degree is healthy. I agree with that. But once it surpasses that healthy threshold, it can quickly become unhealthy and even toxic. Have any of you come across such competition with your female colleagues, or even female friends, etc., in your personal lives? And if you did, how did you go about dealing with it? And it's a tricky question, so feel free to not answer it if you don't want to.
I mean, I think women are unfortunately still behaving in many circumstances as though we're working on a quota system. There's only one spot for women, and we've got to fight for it. So a long time ago, I used to just let it go and take it personally. And I think the biggest lesson I learned was it's not personal. And today I call it out. I call out women, say, we should be working together. And if one woman makes it, she has a responsibility to bring at least 3 other women with her. And I think that is a change of perspective. And if we don't call each other out diplomatically and nicely, we're never going to change. It's, when you're seeing an obstacle or you're seeing something, it's the same thing with sexual harassment. If we don't call it out, behavior never changes. We acknowledge that it's okay to behave that way.
I love that. Yes, when one woman makes it, she almost has not a responsibility, but she can take it upon herself to help other women also get to that point as well, almost mentor them and nurture them to that
Absolutely.
point. I love that.
And support.
Yes. We have one of our viewers, Dahlia. She has her hand raised. Would you like to add something?
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I do feel like we are put against each other a lot. And even if we don't want to be against each other, we are always competing to be the best. And I guess that's because we're trying to prove to be equals all the time. And that kind of turns into a personality defect into women's lifestyle, that we don't realize that we're doing it to each other in our own, kind. And I think the faster we realize that, the less we do or we diminish it. And we also rectify it in this world and be great examples to people and women that work with us.
I agree. That's a good point. It's funny because we all do want to be equal, but then at the same time, we're competing against one another to be equal. So it becomes this whole mesh of this race to be equal. It gets quite complicated. I agree. Does anyone have any other comments or suggestions, or would like to add to Dahlia's comment?
Well, I'm going to say that there's something that I learned when I started taking martial arts when I was 13 years old. I excelled in the sport, but I think the reason why I excelled was because I was only competing against myself. I really wanted to be the best that I can be. And I would look at other fighters or other competitors and learn from them what would eventually help me. And that has really propelled me through my entire life, where I don't, if I see somebody that's either adversary towards me or competitive, I just let it go off my shoulder. I don't let it consume me. It's just not something that I've ever had to really deal with, in the sense that, oh my God, I can't believe this person's doing this to me. It doesn't register in my persona, I guess is what I want to say. And I remember specifically where I don't even know how old I must have been 14. And there was a team fight that we had. It was 5 fighters against another group of 5 fighters. And we only had 4 guys, and we were missing 1 fighter, and we had no other competitors. So they asked me to come in, to step in. So I would have to fight the other team, which had only guys on the team. And I specifically remember this. It was priceless. They called up the 2 fighters. We were in the ring, and then they called my name, and they called the other person, it was like a teenager, I guess, at the time. And he came up, he was laughing and like, I got to fight her, blah, 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 whatever. Well, I can only say, and I'm not the type to boast, but I'm only sharing this with you and the girls out there, and you also, Nail, that I won the fight.
Yeah.
And this guy was so embarrassed that he kind of went back to where the team won, with his tail in between his legs type of thing. And I wasn't there to make him look bad. I was just there to support my team. So it's just a point to say that if you've got a confident level of belief in yourself, then you can pursue and conquer whatever you're setting out to do.
That's amazing. And I'm astonished because you're saying you were like a young teenager, and that's an incredible amount of confidence to have. So you're like battling against all other guys. You're pretty much the only girl there. You're super young. That's a confidence that I think I wouldn't have had when I was 14. And that's nice. That's immense.
Yeah, but that was something where I'm just saying that, like I said, I really wanted to be the best that I can be. So I would compete against myself and say, take this as a challenge. Like, I wonder, can I actually win this fight? So that was sort of a question that was internally in my head at the time. And then, you know, it worked out in my favor. So, and it could be that, you know, he might've been afraid at some point, but, you know, looking bad in front of his teammates isn't a good way either, right?
Yeah, that's a really good mindset. It's that instead of thinking that you're competing against others, compete against yourself and test your limits and test your strength and get to where you want to be. I love that. Yeah, that's a really good point. Does anyone else have anything to add?
I think also to listen to yourself, to listen to your gut, to be true to yourself. I only took 5 weeks, 8 weeks maternity leave because that's the way things were done those days. And my second son, who has cerebral palsy and certain learning difficulties, when he started school, things were doing very poorly. So I changed my schedule and decided that every day I would be there for him. And I did homework with him from kindergarten until Sec 2. And I got a lot of guff for it. But I was like, this is my mat leave. This is my challenge. And my family and myself are important enough that I take the necessary time to do that. And against Helen, I mean, my son will say that if he wasn't born in my family, he probably wouldn't have finished high school. And he graduated from university. And we are very, very fortunate. But it took the guts and the hard work from both of us.
I think Dr. Champagne put her finger on one of the key components of resilience. If you perceive an obstacle as happening to you, that you are the victim and the obstacle is happening to you, you are taking a passive position to it. You're not in control. It's personal. You're never going to get past that obstacle because you're in a passive position. I prefer to always look at an obstacle in a proactive, confident way and say, this is an obstacle and have the confidence, like Adonna presented, having the confidence to know that you're going to get through it. You're going to get through this obstacle. You simply need to think about it, reflect on the best plan and the best path moving forward. And the pandemic is a perfect example. You can see the people who are sitting at home passively and looking at the pandemic and feeling like they have, they're seeing very negative, right? They're not seeing the positive possibilities and the possible path moving forward back to normalcy. They are falling into a depression at this moment. And so if you're looking at an obstacle, which is perfectly normal, life is filled with obstacles. Resilience is about how you face it, how you look at, how you perceive it, and how you get past it.
I love that. Yeah. I think there should be a grieving period, that adaptation phase, that's totally normal. But then after that, it's up to us to be able to dust off our knees, get up and just trek forward and overcome that challenge. Yep. We can't just be moaning and groaning for years. That makes sense. Tina says, great advice that should be put on a t-shirt. Yeah, I agree. So actually, let's shift our conversation and focus on, well, the different building blocks of resilience. What makes up resilience? How is a person to be resilient? And we've already talked about this, but one of the main building blocks is optimistic thinking. How has positive thinking, having a positive mindset, helped you and continue to help you face and overcome challenges? And this question is not just for the panelists, but also for our listeners and audience. So again, feel free to unmute yourself or type your thoughts and comments in the chat box.
Well, maybe I'll jump back in. You know, I think people forget we're not born with optimism. You know, I don't have any superpowers. I'm pretty sure I was born negative, and that it's just a way that we've retrained our brains to react to it. And the only way to get to optimism is to surround ourselves with support, whether it's a loving family or a loving workplace. And if we're bombarded with insults all day long, or if we're working in a toxic environment, we can't see optimism. It's just not possible. And so the advice I give people, and this I've learned the hard way in my own life, is to eliminate toxic people, to eliminate them from your life and from your workplace. And it's incredible how you suddenly see the light, because you feel supported and you know that if you fall, you're going to get back up. And this is, you know, there was a summer where I lost absolutely everything. I got a divorce, I left my home, I ended up with joint custody, lost my job, felt terribly ill. I was completely broke, starting from scratch. And it was the absolute best gift I ever got in my life, because all fear disappeared. And it is amazing how you realize in moments like that, how much fear is a barrier to optimism, because you're so afraid you don't take on any risks and you're stuck in one spot. And the worst thing you can do in life is to stay in one spot when there's an obstacle. You've got to jump. And so when that fear was gone, because I knew that I'd lost everything and I was getting back up, there was absolutely no obstacle that I couldn't overcome eventually. And that changed my mindset. And as a leader, how can you possibly lead a team if you're not optimistic, if you're not projecting hope and passion? And hope and passion are not possible if you can't see a positive future.
Very well said. And actually that goes hand in hand with Adonna's story of her leading investigator who, you know, she didn't have a positive mindset perhaps, and that pretty much affected everyone around her in her environment. So not only is having a positive mindset important for yourself, but it affects everyone around you as well. And that's how they're going to remember you, with your positive vibes.
And one toxic person in a workplace can completely destroy a team. And we forget that. And the most toxic people in a workplace, also a hard lesson to learn for all of us, are usually the highest achievers. And so they're really hard for us to get over. And it's the same thing with toxic people in our personal lives. But once we pluck them out and we surround ourselves with people who love and support us, we become much more optimistic for the future.
Yeah. Now, I have a question for you, because you can pluck out, let's say, toxic people in your life who, let's say, who just recently entered your life, and so you don't have as much of an emotional tie. But what if it's someone that's always been there alongside you, and then it's recently that you realize, oh, wow, this person's actually quite toxic? That's quite difficult to be able to eject them from our lives.
Well, I can answer that question. And to all the listeners out there, I'm going to be extremely transparent. I lived with my grandmother from the age of about, say, 3 till about 9 in Winnipeg. And she had such a positive impact on my life. The unfortunate thing is that my mother did not. She was an alcoholic. She was very insecure. She didn't have, I think she might have gotten to grade 6 or grade 8. I'm not sure, in Trinidad, whatever their grade system is there. And I was not in a loving environment, not even in the slightest. And my sister and I lived with my mom I was 10 years of age, and I won't even get into how we ended up staying there. But this was in Toronto. I spent most of my life in Toronto and moved to Montreal in 2002. But all I knew from back then was I didn't want to be like that. I did not want to be in the type of relationships or the life that my mom was living. And that was something that stuck with me throughout my entire life. And I said, if I have kids, I want to make sure that they're in a good environment. They have the support that they need. And I have to say, I can't be negative always with my mom, but she had made me an extremely strong person. And she was a survivor. She definitely was a survivor. So I got that from her. But just to say that you know, if you're good with yourself and you know what you would like to become, then that is very helpful. If you're not good with yourself, that's when things can go bad for you. So just like Julie said, you need to be sure of yourself. You need to be confident. And like I said, I'm people who know me, I'm not one of these. I don't brag about myself. It's more or less about people around me. But I'm saying this because I don't know, you know, who's listening, but you just have to see the light beyond the tunnel and just believe in yourself and go straight for the light. And everything else will fall into place as to how it should be.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Don't worry. I don't want you guys bringing, you know, getting the tissue out or anything like that. It's nothing like that. Okay. It's just to share so that people know where I'm coming from, but it's my life now. I love it. I'm having fun. I've met some amazing people in Montreal and I'm still here. So, hey.
That's amazing. And I just want to say, I think basically, yeah. So Linda says, oh my God, Adonna, I can so relate. Good for you for taking charge and seeing the light. Now, the thing is, it's easy to say, but it's so hard to do when you're surrounded by darkness. It's so hard for you to, you know, get up and look for that light at the end of the tunnel or imagine that light at the end of the tunnel. So it takes a lot of inner work for sure. And I think the main message here is love yourself, put yourself first. Yes, believe in yourself, think of yourself, but really do love yourself, because once you do that, then it's easy for you to, let's say, pluck out the toxic people, no matter how close they are to you, and just focus on yourself. I love that. Does anyone in the audience want to add anything?
I'd just like to add, I think being grateful and appreciating the wonderful things you do have, no matter how small it can seem, I think that is a really important way of taking care of yourself and seeing life as being wonderful to live.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Love it. Love the positive thinking going on here. So another building block of resilience, and again, we've touched upon this as well, is connection. It's so important to connect with one another in a positive way and seek support when you need it from your family, your friends, your colleagues, and the community. How has connection helped you overcome challenges in your life?
That's such a great question. And you know, the great Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg always said that a meaningful life is living not for oneself, but for one's community. And I've always tried to live following that message. It's so important. Having a community of support, it allows us to be courageous. It allows us to be strong and positive and resilient. But more importantly, I find that being part of someone else's community of support gives me even more of the same. I think for the most of us, the lack of connection during the pandemic has been extremely hurtful. And it's been isolating, and it reminds us that these relationships are so important. They're important to our ability to stay positive and our ability to stay happy. That community, those connections, they are the babysitters that help us. They are the people that we vent to when we've had a bad day. And connections are the support that we need to stay positive and resilient.
I agree. Which makes sense because during the pandemic, we see so many, for example, Zoom hangouts popping up and these happy hours. It's because humans are almost built to be able to connect with one another and interact with one another. It's not to be in solitude. So the power of community is extremely important, especially when one is undergoing difficult times in life. Now, we've talked so much about, females this and females that, but I do want to emphasize while we're talking about the community that there's so many male allies in our society who have allowed us to and continue to allow us to be resilient women and our growth to become more resilient. So my question is, does any of you have a specific male ally or allies in your life who help you overcome challenges that you face in life? And if so, how have they helped you, or how are they helping you?
Okay, I guess I'll start with that. Maybe in a different sense, which we sort of discussed when we were introducing each other a few days ago. I moved from Toronto to Montreal in 2002 and literally had to start from scratch. So that was a little bit stressful. But in 2005, as I mentioned to the girls before, that I was diagnosed with cancer, breast cancer. And my community at the time were my amazing clients. One client, her husband is a gynecologist, Dr. Cleve Ziegler, who is now my gynecologist, or has been for years. Then Dr. Panacci, Lawrence Panacci at the Jewish General, he was my oncologist. So, and then Dr. Harvey Sigmund, he was the surgeon that removed my tumor. And all of these people were connected through my studio, through my clients. They were all male. My clients were females, but the doctors were males. But just to say that I don't think I would have had that quick of a outcome if I wasn't so connected with these individuals. Darlene Singerman, her husband is my family doctor. So I didn't have anybody when I came here. I don't have any family here. I mean, I moved here with my spouse, who is now my ex-spouse, but I just have my kids here, and that's why I'm still here. So when I look at what that community has done for me, I am completely grateful for everything that has happened. So I'm still here, which is great. My boobs are still intact. Sorry about that, but I'm very animated. I cannot thank them enough. So in terms of community, in terms of getting help, that is where I feel that they could have saved my life. Who knows? If I was in Toronto, would it happen? Maybe, maybe not. Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Maybe I'll just jump in, Devisha. I've had many male mentors who, without them, I wouldn't certainly not be in the position I am today for many reasons. One, they believed in me, they pulled me up, they supported me, they nominated me, they provided advice and support. You know, comes back to the need to have support if you want to be resilient in life. And these are the individuals that I would call, and I continue to call today when I hit an obstacle, a challenge that I want to discuss with someone and make sure that my path forward is potentially the right one. We haven't talked about mentors, but you know, if we're talking about resilience in the workplace and in one's career, I think it's essential to have mentors. We should have many. They should be male and female. It doesn't matter if we are a woman, a female leader, or male leader. We should have both, because the perspective is going to be completely different. Mm-hmm. And the advice I received from my male community was very different from my female mentors. And it was extremely helpful to understand the way they would approach a situation.
Interesting. Would you be able to just briefly state the themes that were different from the mentoring that you received from, let's say, a female leader and a male leader?
Well, the male were very strategic, to the point how to move it forward. They pushed me to be more aggressive, which was necessary. As a woman, I think we are always concerned about being criticized for being too aggressive, because we're easily criticized for being overly aggressive. It's not a beautiful female trait. So it's nice to hear that from a man that this is the way they would behave. The women have been extremely supportive in guiding me about balance between workplace and family life. So that's extremely important. That's a conversation that you need to have, that it's okay not to bake cookies, and you know that children are going to forgive you for that. and also how to deal with sexual harassment, which is not something that men are going to have to deal with necessarily in the workplace. And that is unfortunately still something that women face. And one of my concerns now with the young women that I mentor and support is I don't want that behavior to frighten them out of a career that they wish to go forward with. So we as women have to stick together to change that behavior and have men support us in pushing for a change in that behavior, rather than us leave a career or a situation or a workplace because other people are behaving badly.
Yeah, very well said.
I think my best male allies these days are my sons and my fiance's two sons that I see becoming fathers, being fathers, participating fully in family life, supporting their partners or wives. And this to me really, I mean, tells me kind of did a good job, and my fiance and his wife did a wonderful job. And to see that those feminist males like on the same team is really great.
Awesome. Dahlia, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on the fact that, you know, times are changing, and I think we as women need to stop stereotyping all men in the same category, or them having the same beliefs, because not all of them are you know, toxic or all those different negative things that we have put out there in the world. Because a lot of times we need to accept that there are men that are looking out for us. They may be in the form of a neighbor, or they may be in the form of a brother or a friend. And it all depends on how people are brought up and what they see, what is happening around them. And I think we can be what we have to be, but the first thing we have to do is we have to believe in ourselves before any male or female has to believe in ourselves. And we need to also identify that people and men are out there looking out for us. I mean, I cannot say that I have no male support. My brother has always told me, who's telling you all these things? I mean, I know you since you have been crying, you know. And when I came to McGill, I can spot Nayo in the, you know, in the Zoom, that he was one of my mentors. I mean, he did not tell me things that I'm not, or I cannot be. So I think it all depends on us and what we want to look at things as. Because yes, when I was younger, I used to think, oh, okay, maybe this is what the world is. But as and when I started progressing in my career, I also saw that, you know, men wanted to work with me, just like few women wanted to work with me. And the hate or the love was not dependent on the sex they are from. It always depended on how we are portraying ourselves, or the situation that comes across. And I do agree with Julie that a lot of times women, when we speak, we are called as outspoken and not well spoken. So I totally agree with that on, you know, on the topic that being confident is not a problem anymore.
I love that. Outspoken and well-spoken.
Mm-hmm.
Very well said. Thank you, Dahlia.
You're welcome.
Very insightful discussions. And if anyone wants to add their input, please feel free to drop it in the chat or unmute yourself. But definitely, we've all had so many great male allies, and we continue to have great male allies. And they're one of the reasons as to why we're resilient and we continue to grow into resilient women. So thank you to all the males out there. So far we've looked at positive thinking and we've looked at connection. The third building block of resilience we're going to look at is wellness. And this is a building block, I find, that many of us, especially given the current pandemic, we may be placing it on the back burner when in fact it should be one of our main priorities. So my question is, are you prioritizing wellness during this current pandemic? If you are, how are you doing it? And if not, how would you like to prioritize it? What habits would you pick up and implement?
Well, maybe I'll jump in. I have to admit that the first few months when the schools shut down, had no more babysitters, and had to convert the team to working at a distance and transforming the business all at the same time, I did not prioritize myself anymore. I went from working out 6 days a week to not at all, pretty much. And I felt it. I felt the impact. I was not well balanced. I was not positive. I was feeling very, very bad. Physically and mentally. And it was a great reminder that that balance that I had fought so hard to reach and prioritizing a certain amount of time per day was really important. And so during the summer, I've shifted back and reprioritizing myself and isolating that hour a day to make sure that I do that workout and reduce my stress.
I completely agree. I read somewhere such that we spend so many hours, almost 10 plus hours per day, let's say working for an organization, working for someone else. We shouldn't feel guilty about devoting 1 hour, 2 hours working for ourselves out of a 24-hour day. So it's really your perspective and your mindset that's going to allow you to focus on your well-being. Adonna,
I knew you were going to ask me. Okay, so the fitness, I don't know what you want to call me. My clients know that I devote pretty much most of my time to them. When I had my studio, I was teaching a lot of classes. Then when I closed the studio and I moved over to B52, where you were, Devisha, you saw the way I was teaching. I was telling people what to do. I was demonstrating. I was this, I was that, but I was neglecting myself. Then the pandemic hit. And I was asked by B52, can you start doing a few Zoom sessions or Instagram or whatever? And I'm like, oh my God, that means I have to be on the phone and the tech and this program and that. Oh my God, how am I going to do this? So one Instagram Tuesday morning, 10 o'clock led to, can you do more of these? So I ended up opening up Adonna's Fitness Room. So I was doing a class on Monday, B52 Tuesday, Wednesday. Took a day off Thursday, did a class on Friday, did another one on Sunday. It was like, oh my God. So I got myself back into shape, which, so for me, the pandemic was a blessing. And for, being able to offer the classes for people, but I see the important, I know this is my profession. I know the importance of it. And just as, the shoemaker's wife doesn't have shoes type of thing, you kind of get into that rhythm where you neglect yourself. But now I'm back on track, and I'm happy for that. So that's where my wellness is, Devisha.
That's awesome. I love that. I also agree. I'm just going to share my 2 cents here as well. So I used to, before the pandemic, I would do spinning. I would do these group-led classes where you just kind of follow the instructor and do what you're told, and you think you're in shape, you're fit, that's awesome. And then once the gyms closed down, it really forced me to focus on my body. So I started off, let's say, with light dumbbells. And then a few months later, I'm like, these are too light. I need heavier dumbbells. So it's that process of seeing yourself transform when you're in charge of your body and listening to your body. That's what this pandemic and the solitude forced me to do, which is incredible. You learn so much about your body and the way it moves, and you realize, oh, this foot isn't as stable as that foot. And it's incredible, the things that you learn about yourself. So that's awesome. I love that. Does anyone else? Well, I know Dr. Champagne, you wanted to say something.
I don't think that wellness is just physical. I think it's also taking care of your soul, your being. I think it's meditation, gratefulness, writing in a journal, taking walks in nature, centering yourself, going down to your core being, not just moving, but that's important too.
I absolutely agree. Thank you for reminding us. That's completely important. Does anyone actually want to share? Like, does anyone here meditate, do yoga, relaxation?
Yeah, I kind of left yoga just because with my broken hip, all the hip opening exercises make things a lot more difficult. But I think that for me, writing in a journal and being grateful daily and meditating every day usually before bed, and walking in nature is what makes me well.
Yeah.
And one of the things I want to mention is that when the pandemic hit, I guess back in March and April, when we were in the lockdown, and you would be driving and you would see people that you've never seen before walking, running with their kids. It was, for me, I just felt like, oh my God, it's so good. And the positive was there was less pollution because there weren't that many cars out. So I really took that in. And I know now a lot of people are snowshoeing, rackheading, I guess is what you call it, up north, and they're out in the trees, and it's just beautiful to see that. I think that's great.
And we see the kids too, they're tobogganing, they're bringing their little like sleds on the hills. It's so cute. And it's something that I know I did younger, and then it kind of disappeared with the recent generations, but then seeing it surge back up again during the pandemic, it's so nice to see. It's very endearing. I love it.
Visha, I'd like to add too that, mental health also means that you disconnect and you allow yourself for that space. And I think with our phones now and our computers, especially working from home, work is always there. And we have to give ourselves the gift of closing it completely down, if possible for a day, a week. And it's okay. We shouldn't feel guilty about it, is to close it down. And it's incredible what that does to our mental health, to just not think about it for 24 hours.
I love that. It actually reminds me of something that one of my colleagues said. She said, what does end of the day mean? Does it mean 5 p.m. or does it mean 11 p.m.? We don't know when to stop, let's say, replying to our emails. Can we close off after 5 p.m. or are we expected to continue after that? There's a blurred, there's this ambiguous kind of thing as to what end of day means, especially with the current pandemic. So we really have to put limits on ourselves. Awesome. Does anyone have any thoughts or comments? Linda says, I journal daily and meditate. That's awesome. Tina says, create boundaries. That's a really good way of taking care of your mental well-being. Create boundaries. Good. Thalia says, wellness should not feel like just a cheat day that we feel happy on. That's a really good way of putting it. Yes. Wellness should be part of our life. It should be integrated into our everyday, every second of our lives. Very well said. So as we wrap up our session, I'd like our great panelists to give a piece of advice to our listeners and viewers. You're all multidimensional. Oh, sorry, Val, did you want to say something?
Yes, because it's related to the topic. So this is me stereotyping the beautiful women I see before me. So Adonna and Dr. Elaine, from your bios, you're very active women. So my question was for Julie specifically. You seem like a really top-notch career corporate woman. How do you find time for just you? If part of being active is not part of either your work or something that you do because you're an athlete, how do you find time to take care of yourself?
I'm far from an athlete, in case you haven't noticed, but I think you have to create boundaries. You have to create limits, and you have to not feel guilty about it, because you're actually not going to be a good mother or a good leader if you don't. So that's why you have to eliminate the guilty part of it. So I've always found, if we're going to get really practical about how to get it done, I have found that isolating a time of the day that no matter what day of the week it is, I can dedicate that time of the day to myself with energy, and that is early morning. And so before the pandemic, I got up every day at 5:15 in the morning, and I would head off to the gym on days I had the kids, and days I did not have the kids, and days I had the kids, I'd do it at home and work out before everybody gets up. And so when I wake them up because it's time to start their days, I've taken a shower and the day starts. Because at the end of the day, I'm exhausted. It's hard to shut down the computer. People call me and I've got to manage schoolwork and everything else, and it's not my time anymore. And so I think for women, this is the key part of it, is if we don't do this, we're actually not going to be able to do everything else that, that we need to get done in our lives.
Thank you. That was great.
Tina says Sunday evening with Masterpiece on PBS. That's a great way of setting time for yourself. Yeah. But Adonna or Dr. Champagne also like to reply to Val about how that actually goes with my last question. So the piece of advice that I'd like you all basically to share with, hopefully with our listeners and viewers, is you're all multidimensional women balancing your careers, your personal lives, your families, etc. What advice would you give to our viewers and listeners who may be juggling similar responsibilities in their lives? And let's say, especially with the current pandemic, it's hard for them to be resilient. They find themselves stagnant, stuck, unable to even maybe face and accept the challenges. Apart from the positive thinking, the connection, the wellness, what real piece of advice would you give them, and ultimately yourself as well?
So seeing pauses, I'll maybe jump in right away. To respond to Dahlia's effortless multitaskers, I think it is really important to acknowledge the fact that it's not effortless, because one of the things I always worry about is that people listen to us talk and they think, oh, it's easy for those girls. It's really hard for me. It's so hard for us. It's hard for me. Life has been really hard. I have been thrown so many obstacles. I mean, there have been moments that I thought, how in the world am I going to continue? And then I close the door, I cry it out, I open the door, and I move on, because I have to. The staying back and not moving and just giving up is not an option. I have to take care of my family and I have to take care of my team. And that's how you build resilience. But to think that everybody else has it easy and it's hard for you, that's how you become the victim. So I just want to put it out there, because that's all about your mindset. And just another piece of advice to answer what Davisha said, one of the advice that I got that I found very helpful is to, when things become overwhelming, is to open one compartment at a time and to deal with one issue at a time. And as you gain strength, getting through each one, you open more boxes. And that's how I've gotten through the different crises that I had in my life, is you just can't, it's like multitasking. You can't do everything at the same time. And it's the same thing when everything becomes overwhelming.
I love that. I love that analogy, opening a compartment one at a time. Love that. Matt Mayer, sorry if I mispronounce your name. She says, or he says, exactly, it takes effort all the time. We just have to do it. Antonella says, nice advice. Thank you for sharing, Julie. It's very true. Thank you. Would anyone like to add to that? Another t-shirt meme, Tina says. Julie and everyone else needs to bring out t-shirts.
I think every morning when you get up, when you wake up, be thankful and realize that you have a whole new day to rediscover yourself and the world and your potential.
Yeah.
I guess I'm left, right? To say something. I guess just going on Elaine's advice is that you get up and you say to yourself, how can I be better today? Or what can I do that's going to be having a positive impact on my life today? Something that will keep you striving, not putting stress on yourself, but just having something to look forward to that you can either complete or add to your roster of either accomplishments or, taking something off the list that either procrastinating to do, something that is going to make you feel good that day. And just believe in yourself. Just going to what Julie says, I totally get it. I went through a separation. My studio was in a shambles. It was like everything. And I was like, oh my God, I need to figure out how am I going to deal with what first. And you know what? It all ends up panning out just the way it should. So you just have to kind of give yourself that time to, chill and then regroup and then attack.
Yes. Yes. Come up with a mission plan and then attack.
Yeah.
Love that. Yes. And I think a lot of us fail to realize, especially now, is we're really going through a pandemic. So we can't put so much pressure on ourselves to work exactly the same way with the exact efficiency and productivity before our lives were completely deconstructed. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Take it one day at a time. And I love what Adonna said. I like waking up and telling myself at the end of the day, I want to be better than who I am right now. And you have to figure out what you want to do during that day to get you to that point. What's going to make you feel better by the end of the day? And it could be taking a complete day off and you feel great by the end of the day. Sometimes a day off is what we need. Very well done. Dahlia says, I also feel like it's okay to not look put together all the time. Yes, definitely makes us more human, and it actually allows us to connect with more people, that authenticity. Very nice.
It's actually my favorite part of the pandemic is, in the beginning, everybody kind of joined Zoom and they still had all their hair done and the makeup on. And as the months went by, less and less and less, and we're barely putting pants on anymore. And it's okay. It is okay. We put so much pressure on ourselves. Let's reduce that part of the pressure. It's beautiful.
I love
Do we look good from the waist up? But how do we look from the waist down?
None of us are getting up.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Dahlia says I'm not standing up.
Okay, Dahlia.
Drama panic galore. So just to wrap everything up, I want to share with you the building blocks that we've looked at so far. We've looked at optimism, connection, and wellness. And in the remaining few minutes, I want all of you to take 1 to 2 minutes and reflect on which one or more of these building blocks you would like to improve on this year. 2021. Your goal is to be a more resilient person by the end of this year. So take 1 to 2 minutes, think about it, and I invite you to share your thoughts by unmuting yourself or in the chat box. So Vincenzo says all three. Val says wellness. Dahlia says optimism. Antonella says connection and optimism. And feel free to explain why you want to focus on these. Neo says connection, but all three as well. awesome. I love that you're all able to decide which ones you want to strengthen on, if it's all three, just one or two, whatever it is. Tina says connection and networking to meet new people. Edward says connection. So I'm seeing actually a lot of connection, which kind of starts to make sense with the fact that we're all isolated during these times. Makes us realize the value of connection and community. Love that. So thank you all for joining us for this incredible panel. I've learned so much, and I want to give a huge thank you and applause for our three great panelists, Adonna, Dr. Champagne, Julie, for being vulnerable, for being courageous, sharing your stories, your insights, and your advice with all of us. Thank you to Valerie and the entire Career Advising and Transition Services team, NAO as well, for putting this incredible, powerful career summit for all of us. Thank you so much for joining us. I believe the links to our LinkedIn profiles will be put in the chat box, so feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, but otherwise, take care, take it easy, love yourself, optimism, connection, and wellness. And we hope to see you at our next event. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Dabisha. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Val. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening and weekend, ladies. Thank you.
So, panelists, just stay on for a bit, please.
Good thing you said that.
Like,
I just want to make sure, did we get a screen grab, Val?
Oh, good thinking. No, we have not gotten a screen grab.
Thank you, Nao. Thank you to everyone. Thank you, Joanne, Antonella, Celine.
I'll see you on Sunday.
Oh, yes, but you're working, no?
No, we have grandmama's birthday party, but it was when you said it was going to be on Friday.
No, it's going to be on Sunday.
I know, and I'm free, so I'll be there.
Oh, awesome. Yay. Yeah, it's been a while. Okay,
I'm going to stop recording because we don't need that part.